piece of advice I would give you is just start. You have no idea what beauty lies beyond that first step. A lot of us are afraid to just try. We're afraid of failing. Um, we're afraid of a lot of things that it could go wrong, right? But what if it goes right?
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time to chat. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, and I am worried I'm going to mess up her name. So while I'll still give the introduction, why don't you tell us your name so I don't slaughter it?
My name is Ingor van Rooi.
All right, Inga, is that right?
Sure, yes.
All right. I looked at it, I'm like, is it Inga, Ingor? And I'm like, I'm going to mess it up. So as a quick introduction to Inga, so was originally from South Africa, has degrees in informational systems and I think industrial sociology. After college, didn't use the degrees and instead went to become an executive assistant for about 20 years. And then in 2018, lost job due to corporate restructuring and wanted to be an entrepreneur, but had been afraid to take the leap for a while. Both of her parents had been in corporate jobs for their careers, but after losing the job, decided would take the leap, would try it out and would do it. But then instead of doing or actually taking the leap, decided to do some temporary roles and temp jobs and whatnot. But then in 2020, due to COVID, lost those jobs, or those started to dry up. So with all of that, decided to take the more of the leap of doing the entrepreneurial journey and starting that out, and been doing it since then. So and she'll give a bit more details. So with that, as much as introduction, welcome on the podcast.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me, Devin.
Absolutely. So I gave the quick run through, 30-second overview, but maybe dive a bit in deeper and take us back in time to growing up in South Africa, getting your degrees, and how your journey started from there.
Okay. Like Devin said, I'm originally from South Africa. I was born in Cape Town, raised in 2 different cities, and I just, I went to school for IT and sociology, but my career found me. I was just drawn to become an executive assistant because I love people and I love helping them flourish, mostly in the background. So I became an executive assistant. I was doing that for almost 20 years, combined, in South Africa as well as here. And
now, before you dive too much into over that, because that's a long 20 years. So first of all, you got the degrees in informational systems and I think industrial sociology. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Now, what made you, after college, so you got those degrees, what made you decide to go into being an executive assistant instead of using the degrees that you'd gotten?
I think it was my comfort zone. Because I was, while I was studying, I actually worked at the university as well, initially as a tutor for information systems, but then I became an admin assistant at the Faculty of Education, and it was just really, I enjoyed the work, I enjoyed the interaction with people, and I enjoyed that, no day was the same. So that's really what drew me to it. And I think just also because it became my comfort zone. It was what I was comfortable with, right?
Okay, makes sense. So now you do that, and you do that for I think about the period of over 20 years. So that's quite a long time doing executive assistant. And now I think when we chatted before, and as I mentioned, 2018 came along and there was some corporate restructuring. So at that point, I think as we chatted about before, you kind of looked at entrepreneurship, but didn't quite make the leap. So kind of how did that go from 2018 and where did your journey go from there?
I was wanting to become an entrepreneur even before 2018, and then I lost my job, but I decided to make the most of the time that I had as well. And, and I think also I was afraid of failing. But, so I ended up looking for work and, trying to find my next permanent work
Hmm.
and home. But I didn't find anything. There wasn't anything that was up to my standards, should I say. And so I ended up doing a lot of temp assignments up until the pandemic hit in 2020.
Okay, so back in just it was 2018. So you're saying, okay, lost the job. Maybe I'll do entrepreneur stuff, but didn't quite work out. You decided to take temp roles, and that worked for a couple of years. And then, kind of, if I were to reiterate, maybe COVID came along in 2020, and the temp roles started to dry up, or they weren't as available. And so, as you're dealing with that, and I think we also chatted a bit before, your kids are now going into virtual school, so you're dealing with virtual school. Temp roles are drying up, and so kind of how did you decide on what you're going to do from entrepreneur for there? Was it kind of, hey, it's out of necessity, or hey, this is the perfect time, or this is the time that I'm going to do it, or I don't know anything else? Or kind of how did you finally decide to take that leap?
It was actually a conversation that brought that on. I had a friend of mine checked in with me, and she was asking, what I was doing at the time with regards to work. I told her that I wanted to take a step into entrepreneurship. However, I was afraid of failing. And so she actually said, well, even if you're afraid, why don't you try? And you can always go back to the corporate world. And it was as if it was a mind-blowing moment, really, because I had never thought about it like that. We are raised almost to believe that failure is ultimate. And if you fail at something, you can't pick yourself up and try again. Yet when we're babies, we do that all the time. And young kids, we fall, we get up, we fall again, we get up again. But as adults, we learn to fear failure. And because of that, I was afraid of failing as well, right? But yeah, she reminded me that basically, if I failed, I could try something else. It wouldn't be the end of the world.
And so now you get that kind of that motivation, or inspiration, or guidance, or whatever you want to call it. Said, okay, true enough, if I try it and I failed, no worse off. I can always go back to temp jobs or executive assistants, or go do something else. But if I succeed, then I can do or chase after something I want to do. So with that as mind, how did you decide what kind of entrepreneurial job you're going to do, and how did it go?
Well, as I said before, I have been an executive assistant for almost 20 years. So at that point, I had built up that skill set. And so it was just a matter of me taking my skills, my existing skill set, and basically reinventing myself using those skills, which is what I did. And which is why I ended up now establishing my own executive assistant consulting firm.
So now you start the consulting firm, you're saying, okay, I've got the consulting firm. I've done being an administrative assistant. I'll start, kind of start the entrepreneurial journey or entrepreneurial startup based on what I know. And I think it started that about a year ago. And I think when we talked about it before is July of 2020. How's it gone since then? Has it been a rocket ship to the top and you've loved it? Has it been ups and downs? Has it been all down, or how's it gone for you?
Well, for me, it's been, a matter of really working towards adjusting my mindset, because even though I started my own entrepreneurial journey, I still had that the worker or the corporate mindset, right? So in the end, I started working with my own through my company with one client. And I just worked and worked and worked all the time. And then I realized, but you know what? Like, I should actually be scaling up my business. It shouldn't just be, yeah, I have a client and I'm working for them and that's the end of that. So I've now, I've evolved from where I started to now where I'm serving different clients. I actually have grown my team as well. So I have people that I'm working with in order to service my clients.
Hmm.
I also coach people as well. I didn't do that initially, but now I'm coaching people to be able to take the leap and jump off the corporate hamster wheel and do what I did by establishing my own business. So it's been quite a journey. And I think every day is different, and every day ahead will be different to what I actually envision. That's just the the nature of the beast, I guess.
Hmm. No, I think that's, it's exciting. It's fun to get there, get going. Sounds like, as with all journeys, it's, has that ups and downs, but it's been a
Yeah.
great experience. Now, kind of now looking a bit into the future. So, started about a year ago, got it up and going, looking to how to scale, how you can or do, bring on other people, do the additional services. What is the future? You're looking at now to the next 6 to 12 months, kind of what does that look like for you?
What that looks like for me is I'm I actually have quite a few projects on the go. I just established my own YouTube channel, so I'm looking to focus on that and grow that, and hopefully become like you, where I have a podcast. And I'm also, I'm writing I'm writing a few books as well. Just as some are passion projects, and one is actually my memoir, which will become something that I can use when, is to establish myself as a thought leader. I speak mostly about, stepping outside of your comfort zone. And this is what my memoir is going to be, my life story, and basically how I stepped out of my comfort zone. And I'm also looking to build out a course or two, to teach people, firstly, how to leave the corporate world and establish your own entrepreneurial journey, and also looking to coach people in terms of how to leverage social media, and what that looks like for entrepreneurs as well.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun, a lot of fun things ahead of you, and a lot of things to come. So that's super, certainly exciting. So, well, now as we've kind of gone through a bit of your journey, where you started all the way up to today, and even looking a bit in the future, good time. We'll jump to the two questions I always ask at the end of each podcast. Which the first question I always ask is: along your entrepreneurial journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it?
The worst business decision that I've ever made was actually to procrastinate, putting things off instead of jumping right in and failing forward. We tend to want to perfect everything, but at the end of the day, nothing is ever going to be perfect, and you're never going to know exactly what to do. So it's best to just dive right in there and figure it out along the way.
I think that I absolutely agree with that, and I think that that's a very large truism for a lot of entrepreneurs. I talk with a ton on podcasts, work with a ton of the business. I think that's the number one thing that almost everybody hits on is, hey, whether it's procrastination, I wish I'd started earlier, I wish I had dived in, I wish I hadn't had fear or anything of that. Always that after you dive in and get going, it's always that I'm glad I did it, I wish I'd done it earlier type of a thing. So definitely agree with that. So. Now with the second point or second question I always ask, which is if you're talking to someone that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
The one piece of advice I would give you is just start. You have no idea what beauty lies beyond that first step. A lot of us are afraid to just try. We're afraid of failing. Um, we're afraid of a lot of things, that it could go wrong, right? But what if it goes right?
Hey, I definitely agree, and I think that's a great piece of advice. Well, before we wrap up, just as a quick or heads up to the listeners, we do have the bonus question. We're going to talk a little bit about intellectual property. So if that's of interest to you, definitely make sure to stay tuned after we wrap up. But before or otherwise, if people want to reach out to you, they want to hire you, they want to be a client, they want to be a customer, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your best friend, next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
The best way would be either through my website at wegotThisadmin.com, which is a double T,
Hmm.
or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn and just with my name, exactly the way it is.
All right. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, contact you, and use your services if they can.
Thank you.
Now thank you for coming on the podcast. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be guests on the podcast, we'd love to have you. Just feel free to go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Two more things as listeners. One, make sure to click subscribe in the podcast player so you know when all of our awesome episodes come out. And two, leave us a review so other people can find out about all of our awesome episodes. Last but not least, if you ever need help with patents, trademarks, or anything else, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. So now, as we've wrapped up the normal or the normal part of the episode where we talk about your journey, now it's always fun to shift gears just a little bit and talk about a topic that I always, near and dear to my heart, and probably a little bit biased on, which is intellectual property and patents and trademarks and whatnot. So with that, I'll turn it over to you to ask your top intellectual property question.
You know, a lot of people, when they hear the name of my business, they say, "Oh, have you trademarked that?" And I have no idea where to start. So I thought this is the perfect opportunity for me to ask you, since this is your comfort zone, right? So where do I start? What do you think?
Yeah. So, and just as a reminder, name of the company is We Got This Admin, right? So that's the one that everybody, and it's a catchy name. And so I definitely get that. And you've already secured the URL, so you're good on that front. As far as trademarking it, I'll answer the question more or generally and then give you a little bit of specific advice. But the things you're always looking at when you're looking at any trademark is, one, is anybody else ever or already using this? In other words, is it already out there? Is somebody already using it before you had it? If so, then you're going to have problems in the sense that they're the first user, especially if they've registered the trademark, then you would actually be infringing there. So the first thing you do is kind of do a bit of due diligence, go online, Google search it, see if there's anybody else that you're aware of that's using it. And if you want to get a little bit more professional and aggressive, you can also have an attorney do what's called a trademark search, and they'll go out, they'll see what others are registered. And when you're looking at, what others have, you're looking both for, does anybody have the exact same thing you have, or anything that's kind of what's called confusingly similar? In other words, if somebody to look at something that's not exactly the same, maybe it's You Got This Admin instead of We Got This Admin. Well, would people think that those are two different companies, or they be confused because they think it's the same company? And if there's that kind of that likelihood that somebody's can be confused as to who's offering the services, which company they're hiring, then you have that potential problem. So kind of with all of that, first thing is to do a bit of due diligence. After you do the due diligence, then as you're saying, okay, let's say you come back and say, okay, it looks like there is anybody using it. I've got a reasonable path forward. Then you're going to ask the question, I guess, even before you, or after you do the due diligence, even before you hire an attorney, you say, okay, is this trademark worth the value? In other words, is it something I want to protect? Is it a valuable thing to the company? If the answer is you're saying, no, it's really more of my relationships, or we have really good marketing, or, if somebody else were to use the same name, it wouldn't matter because they wouldn't have the same success. Then you're probably going to say it's not worth it to get a trademark because it's not going to be valuable. If somebody else were to copy it and you say, well, not a big deal, then it's not, you can move forward. On the other hand, if you're saying, hey, if somebody else were to come along, they started using the same or very similar name to our company, that's going to hurt our client development. People are going to get confused. It's going to, diminish our ability to get customers or convert them and those type of things. Then you're going to say it may be worthwhile to get a trademark. And in that sense, if you're saying it's worthwhile to get a trademark, you've done your due diligence, and it's a time to reach out to an attorney, have them help you to kind of walk you through the process of what information you'll need, how to get that how to get that pulled together, and how to get it filed. So that's a very quick overview, but any other questions or follow-ups to that?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, if you or any of the listeners ever have any other questions or any follow-ups, feel free to go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We have free sessions where we can chat a little bit more about your business specifically. Otherwise, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It was a fun and it was a pleasure, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you for having me.